there's a new frontier model in town, and it comes from a not-so-suspecting company in SpaceX AI. They just released Grok 4.6. This is now possibly the best model that there is out there, depending on what you care about. As we look at this benchmark card, it shows that Grok 4.6 High is scoring higher than even Fable 5 on some tasks. And this is shocking because, just last week, if you would have asked us where Grok stood in the AI race, we would say, well, they're like a distant third competing probably with Meta and Gemini. The reality is that with this new model, they are now right at the front. And not only that, but the new model, Grok 4.7, is expected to come out in the next 3 to 4 weeks and be even better than this one. This comes on the back of Grok releasing a new product called GrokBot, which we'll get into, as well as a lot of other interesting news from this week. This is the roundup, the weekly roundup every Friday that we publish, where we cover all things about news and AI, things like covering earnings from neoclouds all the way over to the new acquisition of your favorite or least favorite sports team. But we have to start here with Grok 4.6. They're back. They're right here at the frontier. This is an amazing model.
So back. Yeah, no. So for the longest time, SpaceX had kind of lost the frontier race. Elon's engineering team had made a few wrong moves and they kind of fell behind the likes of Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google, which is crazy to say because Google's fallen behind a lot since then. But they're officially back. Grok 4.6 comes, I think, 3 weeks after Grok 4.5 got released, and it is a bigger and better model. And now, specifically, if we look at a few different benchmark comparisons, there's this thing called the AA Intelligence Index. It's a really good way of testing just the general level of intelligence across different models. And on your screen here, you'll see it compared directly to GPT 5.6 Sol Max. So that's like the highest, hardest version from OpenAI, as well as Fable 5 Max. And you'll see it is the equivalent to GPT 5.6 Sol and just a point off Fable 5. So you could argue that its general intelligence level is right up there. But the best part is it comes at a fraction of the cost. So it's 5x cheaper output than Sol, 8.5x cheaper output than Fable. Overall, you're kind of ranging between 3 to 5x cheaper than these two models, which is a big thing if you're like a company that's using these frontier models and want to kind of figure out how to cut your cost down from tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, the main way that they're able to achieve this frontier intelligence, well, there's a few ways, but the main one is they spin up a bunch of agents. So Grok 4.6 uses multiple agents to kind of like solve your query. Now, this isn't something that's relatively new. This is something that Meta is doing in their smaller models. It's something that a lot of Chinese open source models are also doing. So that's one part. But two, and this is like, I have to emphasize, this is SpaceX's like biggest moat. They have a lot of data, a lot of useful data that makes these models insanely smart. They can just bung it into it when they're training it. And also a hell of a lot of compute, which Elon has been very strategically amassing over the last year. He has like the most compute out of anyone in the game. And we're starting to see this. Like you mentioned, like 4.7 is coming out in a few weeks' time, and it's going to be even bigger and better than this. I think it's going to be like a 3 to 5 trillion parameter model. So you can only imagine that, like, with the cost benefits and with the intelligence that's increasing, like SpaceX is in a new world right now. It's very impressive.
And this is where things are going to start to get really interesting, because it was mostly a matter of if, not when. And now it feels like it's a matter of when they actually get to the frontier and eclipse it, for a few reasons. The first of which is that, as we mention all the time, the SpaceX team is the best team in the world at building physical things, at moving atoms around, at compiling data centers quickly. It is nothing compared to building a rocket ship, to just put a couple servers on a rack on the ground and plug them into electricity. So they have been doing this quickly and efficiently. In the episode yesterday, we talked about microhard, which is the small version of macrohard, yet it is the same exact footprint in terms of GPUs in a cluster. So basically, they've been able to figure out how to get 200,000 coherent GPUs into a package the size that's about 1/3 of macrohard. So it's this amazing iterative process that they have on hardware. And then they have this amazing iterative process on software, where they're planning to publish these models once a month that are incrementally stronger and stronger. You said now, EJS, I think we're at 3 to 5. I'm pretty sure there's plans for like 8 to 10 trillion parameters in terms of parameter count.
They actually have that training run going right now for a 10 trillion parameter model.
It's in the oven right now. So we are going to get that after it's done with the post-training alignment phase. But the idea is that it's all coming, it's all happening. The hard part is mostly done. They've gotten from 0 to 1. They've reached it back to the frontier. Now it's just a matter of seeing how far they could push it, how quickly. I'm going to guess like pretty quick. I don't know. When I think about other advantages like their data set, like you mentioned, having access to all the proprietary space rocket science data that seems valuable in terms of science and intelligence. Basically, they have this open corpus of data that no model has ever been trained on that's proprietary. And for those that aren't familiar, like Starship, the giant rocket that's going to Mars, that was built 100% by humans. There was no AI in the process. So all of the math, all of the science, all of the hardware schematics, that's incredibly valuable. And that's what Grok 4.6 is being trained on. So this model is an amazing model. And I'm very excited to see where Grok goes from here.
Not to mention that Elon Musk has specified that by the end of the year, Grok 5 will be released. I believe that will be the 10 trillion parameter model. So we're talking about Mythos grade level model, but it'll be the smartest engineering AI model in the world. And the reason why he says that is it'll be trained entirely on SpaceX's engineering data. And there's no better physical engineering team in the world that isn't at SpaceX. So not only is he building better generalized models, he is building hyper-specific ones that are going to hopefully push the frontiers of science, material sciences forward. Now, for those haters out there that have, validly pointed out that Elon makes a lot of big promises but doesn't really fill his shoes, this is one instance where he definitely is doing this. And I don't think it was until a few days ago priced into the market. But like right now, when you look at the stock, it is up 26% in the last 5 days. I remember when we made our episode last week when the stock was down, I don't know, like 35%. And we literally said that there's a lot of unlocks coming out. We understand that there's a lot of supply constraints and issues here. But if you are somewhat a mid to long-term holder, SpaceX so obviously has a track record for execution, being able to pull feats like this off. And people just weren't pricing into the AI company. Remember, when you buy SpaceX stock, you aren't just buying like a rocket company, right? You're buying a satellite connectivity company. You are buying the cheapest way to get into space and launch your own compute. If you wanted to harvest that, you're buying a rocket company as well. And you're also buying an AI company. Oh, also the social media company of the world that's going to distribute a bunch of these things, including this new product that has just come out, which we have been playing around with called GrokBot. It's my understanding that this is basically their version of OpenClaw, except it actually works. Do I have that right, Josh?
It's a remarkable product. I am obsessed with GrokBot. It feels like the SpaceX AI team is jumping to endgame of what a agentic product could actually look like. Like you mentioned, it is very similar in sense to OpenClaw, but it feels like it's a much more improved and refined version of OpenClaw in the sense that it's fully agentic. And maybe I could explain the way it works. So basically, you join this application and it just gives you a text box, similar in style to iMessage. You could picture like where you send your text messages, except you could spin up an agent. You can give them a task, you can give them a personality, you give them a name, and then they will be that person for you. So for example, if you like working out, you go to the gym, you create a little chatbot and you say, hey, you're my gym workout companion buddy. You are a world-class expert at fitness. You are going to give me an entire workout program based on these 10 things that I know about my body. And I'd like to work with you every single day to actually get more fit and more healthy. And remind me every day to go and work out. And if I don't check in with you, then remind me again and again until I actually get my ass to the gym and work out. And this is a very basic version of what it's capable of, but I think it's really interesting in a way that OpenClaw wasn't, because OpenClaw required a bit of technical expertise. You needed to host your own server. You need to download the software on the server. You need to run maintenance. You need to manage the memory system. You need to manage all the nuance and complexities. With this program, all you have to do is just log in and you just start talking to it. It hosted on their servers. The application is beautiful. They've done this really cool thing that I love, which is the design of the actual agents. They have this very cute animation. It kind of disarms the feeling that you're working with this like kind of scary, spooky AI and just turns it into a really fun experience. And it's available on mobile. It's available on desktop. And I cannot encourage trying it out enough. And you don't even realize that you're talking to a system similar to OpenClaw because it's so easy to set up. It's all handled in the background. And I think amazing product from Grok.
If you're listening to this and you're wondering, okay, is this a new AI model? Should I be using this? I tried that OpenClaw thing out and it was terrible. It stole all my money from my bank account. Let me try and explain like who this product might be pitched at, right? So it is not the ideal product to use if you are a hardcore software engineer, if you want to code every day. This is pitched at sort of knowledge workers who spend a lot of time doing software or desktop-based tasks, but want to automate some of the more menial things like email admin or calendar scheduling or customer support and stuff like that. These types of things take up a lot of time. And if you kind of like sum up the economic value of all of it across like every single sector, it is quite a large sum. And I think to understand why GrokBots isn't just a toy is to understand what Elon Musk said, I think about 6 months ago, which is it is very much XAI and now SpaceX AI's mission to replace a lot of human software-based tasks, not so that it replaces people's jobs, but to give them the freedom to not waste their time on stuff that doesn't need to be wasted. They can kind of like automate away all the boring manual labor that you get tired of doing at work, and it frees you up to do more creative, impactful things in your actual job. He references it as a human emulator. So it's basically you can interact with these agents and you don't even know that it's another human. That's like the real test, the benchmark on the other end. And this is the first step towards that. Now, is this that? No. But is this a really refined and easy to use version like you mentioned, Josh? Yes. You sign up, they spin up a virtual machine in the cloud, and your agents just kind of like run riot, and they can like simultaneously take over your computer, but it's done in a very safe mannered way so that they can't do anything crazy. And the thing that pops to the top of my head when I read through and watched all the demos of this product and read the feedback is this is a direct attack against not OpenAI or Anthropic, but Apple, who is releasing Siri AI in a few months' time now and is meant to function and perform completely on your phone. It's meant to interact with all your apps and all that kinds of stuff. Now, granted, GrokBot can't do that right now, but it is accessible and available on your phone. You can text it whenever you want. And I can only imagine that eventually this will get access to some types of phones, maybe Android first because the Apple ecosystem is so closed. But I see this as a direct competitor there. And I'm just so happy to see Elon make a functional product that isn't just a model, because that's what he's best at.
Yeah, and at the very least, you get the app on your phone. And the new Siri is actually launching in about a month from today. So it's coming very soon. But this feels like the magic that I felt with OpenClaw, except a more refined and far more productive version. Currently, it's baked in with GPT 4.6, which we just said is a remarkable model for an incredibly low price. As these models continue to improve, having those baked into this agentic experience feels pretty incredible. It's like you open up your phone out of your pocket and you have this series of brilliant supercomputer helpers that can do anything in the world for you. They can work together. They can gain access to your context. It feels like a peek into the future. This feels like OpenClaw 2.0. So it's a really exciting product. I think we're going to follow this one closely and see what the other companies' reactions to a product like this are going to be. But that is the Grok update. Congratulations on your new frontier slot. Looking forward to the next one. For the next topic, we have another, kind of frontier model, except this one on the open source side. DeepSeek is back with another release as well. DeepSeek V4 Pro. And the price floor has moved once again. This is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. So DeepSeek, if we kind of harken back to, like a year and a half now, which is not that long ago at all, caused a massive disruption in the AI field, because back then, compute was king. Sam Altman was on top. And if you could buy as much compute as you can, you could train the smartest models. DeepSeek came along, which is, I believe, birthed out of a hedge fund, Liang Wengfeng. Yeah, he's a hedge fund manager in China, and basically said, hey, yeah, I ran a bunch of quants and asked them to make a model that would help it with financial trading, and ended up creating a groundbreaking model that didn't require as much compute. And it kind of like tore the market apart. Well, since then, they've released, I think, one more model, and now they're back with like their big boy model. Now, this isn't an official release. This has been rumored to be released soon, but we had an official leak about the benchmarks for this model, DeepSeek V4 Pro. Now, yes, it is re-rated the cost sheet. As always, it is always the cheapest cost per unit intelligence for an AI lab out there. But what struck me was some of these benchmarks that were leaked. Now, if you look at Terminal Bench 2.1, which is a popular coding paradigm or benchmark, it comes in at 87.9, right? Now, when you compare that directly to, say, Fable 5, it is, 0.1 of Fable 5's level of coding capability measured at this benchmark. If you look at Opus 4.8, Kimi K3, and GLM 5.2, absolutely crushes it. But the other worrying part is this one over here. It's the CyberGym benchmark. It is not only rivaled, but is slightly better than Fable 5 at cyber capabilities. Now, the reason why this worries me is Dario had a really good post, I think about a month ago, where he said, in about 6 months' time, we are going to have an open source version of Mythos's level of cyber capability. And that's going to be an issue because it's going to have no safeguards around it. So the reason why Mythos hasn't been able to wreak havoc on the world is because they have safeguards around it. DeepSeek, if they release this in an open source fashion, is going to have, a bunch of amazing effects where you can run it at home. It's cheaper, private, blah, blah, blah. But also, if it was put in the hands of a malicious actor, it could end up causing havoc. So I just wanted to point that out. Like, it isn't an official release just yet, but it's something that I'm keeping my eye on.
It's coming. Well, we did have an official release, and it came in the form of an earnings release. In fact, we had two of them. One from CoreWeave and the other from Nebius. For those not familiar, these are neocloud providers. Neocloud providers, they're basically, they work with the GPU providers to collect GPUs. They build their own infrastructure, and then they rent out that infrastructure to people who want to train their AI models or use them for inference or whatever it may be. So you could think of it as like AI training or AI inference as a service they offer to people. They had a pretty unbelievable quarter, both of these companies. When we look at Nebius, how much was it up on the day? I'm not seeing it on the chart, but I know it was up like a huge amount.
I think it was up 25% on the day. Yeah.
And CoreWeave, I believe, was up 31%, at least this week.
Yes.
Both of these companies showed blowout numbers, mostly because, as we mentioned in the previous episode, the price per rental hour of GPUs is just going through the roof. Everyone, when they initially evaluated these neocloud providers, they were baking in depreciation of these GPUs over time. Because when you have a GPU, you assume it's a depreciating asset, you mark it down year over year until it reaches a settling point. What's happening is the inverse. The number's going up. So therefore, the amount of revenue that they're making is going up. And from the CoreWeave earnings call, we have a quote here. It says, "We recently signed an A100 contract." Again, those are the 2020 GPUs that extends into 2029 at an attractive price. So people are signing contracts for 3 years out on GPUs that are
25%
6
higher
years old
than they rented out 2 years ago, by the way. So
that's incredible.
Prices
so
are
on the
just going
surface, I mean, that looks great. We're like, okay, this is a good company. But then also, I do have to say, I was looking into the earnings, particularly of CoreWeave, which I'm more familiar with, and I realized that they actually have a bit of an issue on their hands. They're spending a lot of money that they don't have. So one of the things that we look at when we look at the hyperscalers in particular, like Google and Amazon, is they're spending a lot of money out of their free cash flow. They're not going into debt. What's happening with CoreWeave, at least, is they have $6.5 billion of CapEx, but they have a negative free cash flow of just under $6 billion, which means they're losing money. They have debt, around $35 billion of it. And this is a company, when I see that, I'm like, oh, wait, that's the thing we've been looking out for. The hyperscalers don't have that because they're making enough revenue in order to offset that. But this company, I don't know. I just noticed that and I was like, okay. A little flag went off. I'm like, okay, great earnings. Number went up, but we're spending a little bit more than we can afford right now.
But they also have a revenue backlog of $104 billion, and they just signed $25 billion in customer commitments, which I think about 50 to 60% of that is paid up front just for Q3 alone. So you're definitely right to call out the debt backlog. I saw Martin Shkreli, our financial analyst provocateur, make the point around that they're in a lot of debt. But I think this is just the name of the game over the next couple of years, where a lot of hyperscalers, especially these neoclouds who have to compete with the big boys like Microsoft and Google and AWS, need to double down on AI CapEx if they want any shot of winning. And if you look over at the Nebius kind of breakdown, by the way, we should get into the revenue numbers just very briefly. Like their revenue is up 454% year upon year. That is
great
an
business,
insane business. And that is not too indifferent quarter to quarter as well, where I think they're compounding by like 50%, which is just absolutely insane. But the point around Nebius is this is a more, shall I say, grown-up version of CoreWeave. And they're sitting on about $8 billion in cash. So I think of like CoreWeave being a younger gun that's like really eager and might end up flying too close to the sun. But they do have the backing of NVIDIA. They do have contracts with Anthropic, I believe, which essentially prop up that revenue backlog that I mentioned earlier on. And I just want to explain something that separates what these neoclouds are versus like some of these hyperscalers. When you look at Google, when you look at AWS, when you look at Microsoft, they've been in the cloud game for a while. So when this AI stuff came along, they basically looked at it and said, oh, cool, I'm squeezing 30 to 40% margins on normal cloud. I should be able to do the same with AI, right? So they go to Jensen and they buy all these GPUs and they realize, oh, Jensen's taking 70% margin, so I have to take less percentage on this. So they become a little more difficult to work with. When you're a company that wants to lease compute for some of these hyperscalers, they don't do anything and everything for you. Compare that to Nebius and CoreWeave. They will go out to build a specific cluster that works for your specific workload. And that's the difference between these two companies, or these two types of companies, and why I think Nebius and CoreWeave are actually going to do pretty well in the future.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll see. We also had news from another company similar in the space with Intel.
I love this
who
company.
was saying, they're like, hey, actually, we kind of need some more money. Can we get $15 billion?
Yeah.
And they asked for $15 billion and the market kind of hated it. The stock fell 5% after announcing that they are doing a $15 billion common stock issuance to help fund the AI build out and growth opportunities. Market was like, ooh, we don't like that. Again, to the CapEx thing. Everyone's allergic to CapEx for some reason. They think that these companies are not good at allocating money. Clearly, they're wrong because, in the last day, Intel has now bounced back. They're doing fairly well. But what is the story behind this reaction and the kind of knee-jerk reaction in which initially they were a little upset, but then it seems like today the market's kind of coming to its senses and figuring like, wait a second, maybe we do like CapEx.
Well, people obviously do like it, but specific people, which are the investors in Intel. So they originally asked for $15 billion, but they ended up getting demand for $100 billion. And they thought, okay, well, we won't take $100 billion worth of equity sell, but we'll take an extra $5 billion. So they ended up raising $20 billion in under 24 hours, might I add. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth do they need more money? Why are they selling equity? Why are they diluting shareholders? Well, number one, the dilution isn't actually that much. Who cares? But if you listen to their last earnings call, Lee Bhutan, who is the CEO, who's been changing things around a lot for Intel, as well as the CFO, said something very specific, and I'll quote it. He goes, things are going really well. And we have almost $20 to $30 billion cash balance that we can spend on anything and everything. However, if things are going really well, we may raise external capital. And what he was referring to there is if they have a lot of signed contracts and upcoming customers, big customers that want to use their foundry. There's something called Intel Foundry where Intel is basically building a chip fab that is going to go up against NVIDIA and the likes of AMD as well. Then they will raise external capital. This is the clearest signal that they have those customers. So I have a feeling over the next couple of months, we're going to see an announcement from Intel saying that they've signed a major client like, I don't know, an Apple or an Anthropic or OpenAI, basically saying, yeah, we're going to be designing custom chips for them, which I think is a big deal. So I'm happy to see Intel winning, and I'm a pretty big fan.
Yeah, well, part of the reason why they're needing this build out is because, again, we talk about the increased amount of inference that has been happening. There's just so many inference tokens required because of agents. And if you're building with agents, we have a message for you from our friends and sponsors over at Ledger, because oftentimes if you're building with agents, you're probably worried about security. We've seen all these breakouts that have happened recently in the space. It's kind of scary. Ledger has a solution to this. It comes in the form of 3 parts where the agents propose, the humans approve, and then the Ledger signers enforce. This is the 3-step process to ensure that you are safe when you're working with agents. Ledger has this thing called an agent stack. It's totally open source. It comes equipped with tools to help you manage the way that you work with your agents. It works with Claude Code, Codex, Cursor, anywhere you really interface with AI, and it's totally open source. So you can check it out in the link in the description below. Thank you so much to Ledger for sponsoring this episode. Now, we have to move over to watermarking, which is apparently a thing that's been happening now. What's the watermarking story here?
I'm still trying to figure it out myself, but basically, our friends across the pond in the EU, they like regulating stuff, especially tech and especially AI. And their latest law has basically required the top AI labs to watermark the text output or the response that your AI chatbot gives you when you write to it. So let's say you ask Anthropic, or Claude specifically, hey, can you teach me how to do A, B, and C? Or let's say you ask it to do a bit of work at your job, right? Like help you generate a structure for a document. That text that it generates will have an embedded watermark that can be traced back to being Claude. So let's say you copy that text and you paste it into your work document, and eventually your manager is like, I'm going to run this through a detection system just to see if this was written by Claude. By the way, even if you edit it, it'll still work. So he runs it through Claude or runs it through Anthropic's new thing, and apparently it'll become flagged as written by Claude or AI specifically. And the EU's justification behind this is essentially, we want to make sure that we protect users from AI-generated content and be able to distinguish between human-generated stuff and AI-generated stuff. I have a bunch of questions around this, being, number one, is this official? Number two, why is an EU act being applied to the entire world? By the way, this will be applied to not just EU countries, but models anywhere and everywhere in the world. I don't really know what to think of this.
Yeah, the EU has this really funny thing where sometimes they ruin the world, sometimes they help the world. And there's a funny example that I love to reference here, which is like the iPhone. The iPhone had this proprietary cable, which was Lightning. And it was kind of annoying because it was the only device that used a Lightning adapter. It was proprietary. It only worked for Apple. The EU was being annoying as they are. They said, no. You must use a generic port. You must use a port that everybody else is using that's not proprietary. So Apple had to accelerate the switch over to USB-C. And it turns out that worked out well for everyone. We enjoyed that. This seems like a different case. I'm not really sure. I think we could kind of stay tuned for more information on how this is going to roll out and what this will actually look like. But an interesting development nonetheless. There's another interesting development that I added to this agenda intentionally because I needed to talk about it today. Not because I care about the LA Lakers, but because I care about the people who bought the LA Lakers. So for those who aren't familiar, the LA Lakers was sold last year for about $10 billion, I believe. It was flipped in the matter of 12 months to a new owner who just purchased the stake for $12.5 billion, the most expensive sale in American history. There are two people behind this purchase. The first one, his name is Bob Iger. You might know him as the dude who acquired Marvel, Lucasfilms, 21st Century Fox. That's like Star Wars, Iron Man, Avengers. This is the movie guy. This is the CEO of Disney. He partnered up with this other guy named Joshua Kushner, who you may also have heard of as perhaps the single largest, if not one of the largest investors in OpenAI, and one of the most active investors in the company, to which Sam Altman frequently references him as the flagship person who you want to invest on your cap table. I find this to be really interesting because this very much feels like the barbell strategy in which you have a fund, Thrive Capital being the name of it, which is fully invested in the frontier. They're investing in AI, they're investing in all this robotics infrastructure, all these things that are coming down the pipeline. And then they're also investing in what you could imagine as a post-AGI world. What things actually matter, what things go up in value when AI can automate everything. Well, I mean, people aren't going to stop watching basketball, right? And that's uniquely human. We're not going to get humanoids involved in that. So they're looking to purchase assets that are durable post-AGI. And I just found this to be a really interesting story of, if anything, a thought experiment. When you think about the worlds after we have artificial superintelligence, we have humanoid robots walking around everywhere, we have robotics at scale. What are the things that still matter to us as humans that we're going to continue to spend capital on? It's probably something like these human experiences. And the LA Lakers are a pretty sweet brand. So they dropped a bag on securing this. And I just thought it was really interesting and worth mentioning. And just like an interesting thought experiment on like, hey, where's the world going to go once we figure all these hard problems out?
Yeah. Largest transaction for a sporting franchise ever. That is
huge.
A large amount of money. I'm big fans of Thrive, and I like the way that Josh thinks of a lot of his investments. But yeah, to your point, I think this is a very intentional bet on humanity, which is very refreshing to see from one of the largest AI investors in the world. And I think that, as time progresses, human-created or human-authenticated IP is going to become incredibly valuable, and sporting just happens to be one of those franchises where, that condenses pretty strongly. And I think, it's just also pretty dope to just buy your favorite team. I think that's a friggin' epic,
pretty baller.
epic baller trade for them. And yeah, so to round off the docket, speaking of OpenAI, they're churning through these employees, man. But just to round this off, Brad Lightcap, who joined, I believe, as the head of growth and then ended up becoming the COO, has left. Brad Lightcap was pretty definitive to a lot of OpenAI's growth stage, specifically from like GPT-3 onwards. He's been toiling away, but now he's left to go do bigger and better things. We don't actually know what he's doing, but the point is, OpenAI has seen quite a lot of churn over the last couple of months. It happens to come around a time where they're rumored to basically be IPOing. When I look over at Anthropic, I see the opposite. They're like a magnet attracting a bunch of people. And I do wonder what the differences between them are actually. But that being said, it doesn't seem to be having any change structurally. The research team is still pounding along and creating better models. But it's just interesting to see. And, Brad, if you're watching this, dude, like, thanks for everything, dude. You've absolutely killed it. So, yeah.
Pretty legendary run. Yeah. OpenAI seems to have this remarkable rate of churn where a lot of top leadership leaves as a lot of very impressive people come in. And I think it's interesting and just noteworthy. I'm not sure what that implies, but a lot of people want to work there. A lot of people are going there. I guess it's a testament to how intense it is to work there, but noteworthy nonetheless. Thank you for your services, my dear Brad. You have made a meaningful impact on the world through OpenAI, and I'm sure whatever is coming next. Sam Altman said that he looks forward to working together. So whatever this new thing is, I suspect they're going to be doing it as some form of a partner. We'll see, TBD. But that is the roundup. This is a fairly long one. We had a lot to cover this week. A lot of cool and exciting news. And it's funny, it felt like this was a down week. This week felt kind of like a lull. There wasn't that much going on, and yet still we are here talking about so many things that are happening every single day. I think the highlights this week really, Grok coming out with that new model was pretty big. Meta releasing the open source models were pretty big. We had the full diagnosis on the exploit that happened with OpenAI and breaking through Hugging Face. You could check out all of those videos. We filmed entire episodes about that if you haven't made it through. But if you have, and you've reached this point of the video, made it through another week, congratulations. Thanks for sticking with us. It was a really good one, really exciting. You are now fully up to date. You can go and touch some grass, enjoy your weekend. Maybe look at the sun, but not for too long. The eclipse happened yesterday at the time of recording. It looked amazing. I went to the last 2 full eclipses and I missed this one, and I have so much FOMO. So if anyone was there, I'd love to hear about your experience.
What do you mean you went to the last 2 eclipses? Like you traveled to a country where you could see them? Like,
yeah, the United States of America, dog.
Oh,
it was great.
Damn.
Tennessee, and then I forget where the second one was a couple of years ago. But they're amazing. They're unbelievable experiences. And another one just happened. It covered a lot of Spain.
Wait, Josh, I thought
Iceland.
they were every 90 years. Wasn't the last one like 1999?
No, dude, I saw the last one like a couple of years ago, right? Right? Like it was like a 4-hour drive away from here.
Wait, let's track this up. So that sounds epic. I mean, it must be
it's just like unbelievable experience. Similar, I guess you could kind of make it a comparison to the World Cup in a way, where it's like this unifying experience that feels incredibly neutral. Like, sure, the World Cup, everyone has like their favorites, but it's this unifying thing where you experience this together and you're like, holy shit, like we're pretty small beings in this universe. We don't mean a lot. There's like really powerful things happening, and it's something that's totally out of our control that is like remarkably beautiful and unique and rare. And I could see why, if people like who didn't know what this was, had this happen to them, you'd probably be pretty freaked out. You'd probably believe in aliens or whatever crazy stuff, because like that's what it feels like. So next we'll find where the next one is. We'll put it on our calendars. We'll book a flight and we'll go because it's amazing. But
I would love
that's what
that.
I just had a little bit of fun about. So
I saw some insane photography and videography about people like seeing this for the first time. And also there was this awesome video of a guy like skateboarding off a half ramp, like into like the eclipsed sun as it was setting. It was just like the most insane thing ever. Everything was dark. And I couldn't help but think, is this AI? And so I'll leave you.
That was real. Wait, also one cool thing about like, because it mostly happened in Spain and Mallorca, the sun was going down right at the time of the eclipse happening. And when the sun is closest to the horizon, it's largest. So it looked like this huge eclipsing sun. And I think that's the video you're referencing of this, like with the telephoto lens, you can get some pretty unbelievable shots.
It looked like the end of the world, honestly. It was pretty insane.
So cool.
But yeah, that is it. That is the roundup. Thank you so much for listening. If you are listening to us, if you're watching this and you aren't subscribed or you don't have notifications on, please do. It helps us out massively. Leave us a comment, DM us. A bunch of you have been saying hi in IRL as well. So we love that. Keep approaching us. Keep saying hello. We love to hear from you. And yeah, that is it. We will see you next week. Back again on Limitless.